All right, while she's working on that, I'll go ahead and I'll introduce myself. My name is Jason Uhley. I'm the General Manager, Chief Engineer for the Riverside County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. And I've been with the district for about 20 years. I've been the GM now for about 2 years. But the reality is I spent really over half my career coordinating the Riverside County stormwater programs. And so much like Hope, Hope and I have been working on this together for the better part of 15 years. And so I'm really excited to be here today because I get to see a lot of the faces that I've been working with for so long. It's almost like coming home a little bit. And I'm also really excited because I remember the first time we did this, first time LESJWA had this water summit, I think we had about 20 people. I mean, it was a really small group. And we've kept at it, we've kept educating people, and we're trying to get interest in it. And I think today I've heard that we have over 100 people in attendance today. And so I'd just like to thank everyone for showing an interest in this, and thank you for being here today because we've been working really hard about this and we're really excited to talk about what we've been doing. And so now I've got my presentation. And so first I'm going to do a little bit of a really quick overview of who we are. We are the Riverside County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. And so first and foremost, we build flood control facilities. We build storm drains, channels, levees, dams that help protect our communities from flooding. But starting about 10 years ago, my predecessor, Dusty Williams, started turning the district from just being focused on flood control to starting to focus on other aspects of our mission. And so we started to focus on water conservation. Historically, our job was to get the water through our communities as safely and quickly as we can, that stormwater runoff. Now we started thinking about how do we capture some of that stormwater runoff and put it in our local aquifers so that it's available to our water agencies for water supply and helps to offset the needs for reclaimed water. The other thing we started to turn into was focusing on stormwater quality and protecting the health of our lakes, rivers, and streams. And so now we're implementing more partnerships and more programs with the cities and with the counties and with other entities that are interested in this mission to help ensure that we're ensuring that the stormwater runoff from our communities doesn't cause impairments to those lakes, rivers, and streams. And so when you think about us, I don't want you to think about us as just a flood control district, because that's really a misnomer. We're actually a stormwater management district. And by that, I see our mission is actually trying to manage stormwater as a resource to the maximum benefit of our communities. And so that's our agency's goal, and that's what we're trying to do through all aspects of our mission. But today I'm going to focus on our role for water quality. And so a big part of the district's role in water quality is driven by regulations. And in part of that is because under the Federal Clean Water Act, if you own and operate a storm drain, you're required to get a permit called a Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permit, or an MS4 permit. And so what that permit basically does is like 200 pages. The thing's a monster. But at the end of the day, what it says is there's a lot of urban areas that drain into your storm drains and ultimately drain into these lakes, rivers, and streams. You got to make sure you're controlling that runoff that's getting into your storm drain so it isn't impairing those lakes, rivers, and streams. And that's really what it's about. But the other thing you really need to know about this permit is the flood control district isn't the only entity that owns storm drains. The cities and the county own and operate storm drains. And all of those storm drains are interconnected. And so it's really this big holistic system for our region. And so when the Regional Water Quality Control Board issues us an MS4 permit, they don't issue individual permits, they issue one permit that covers all of the entities that are part owners of that storm drain system. And then they say you're all individually responsible for ensuring compliance with the permit. And so when you got 20 or 12 or 13 entities, it's part of one permit, you need a leader. The district really owns and operates the backbone of the storm drain system. We own the big regional flood control projects. And so we serve as the principal permittee. And so it's our job to help to coordinate the permittees and to be the point of contact for the Regional Water Quality Control Board with regard to these programs. And the programs that are required by this permit are far-reaching. Just about everything a city does is regulated in one way or another by these permits. And that's because just about everything we do happens to some extent outdoors. And so when you do business inspections, you're looking at your businesses to make sure that if they have trash enclosures, those trash enclosures are covered and designed so that if it rains, the stormwater goes around the trash enclosure and not through the trash enclosure. If you have businesses that have outdoor material storage areas, Are they making sure that those outdoor material storage areas are designed in a way that the stormwater goes around them and not through them? And so in addition to regulating businesses, it also asks that you regulate construction sites. It asks that you regulate new development and require them to both minimize the potential for stormwater to commingle with pollutants on site and treat that stormwater. And it also requires you to maintain your own municipal sites. So you have to hold your own facilities to the same standard that you're holding the private sector to. And then it even covers things like how often you sweep your streets and how often you maintain your storm drain. It's all covered by this permit. And the district's role is to work with the regional board to make sure those permit requirements are achievable by the city and that they make sense. And then to also make sure that the programs that the cities are developing are described in such a way that the regional board understands what the cities in the county are doing. District also, to kind of help things along, builds regional compliance guidelines that can be used by other entities that are regulated by these permits. So this is an example of our low impact development design handbook. And this basically creates guidelines for developers so they know what's expected of them on their development sites, and that we can help to ensure that the BMPs that are being implemented by the development community are consistent and effective across the board. And so sometimes, despite these programs that we're implementing, which are very significant, we don't hit the mark. And so that's kind of what's happened with Lake Elsinore and Canyon Lake. The cities have done a lot of work in the watershed to control the discharge of nutrients, in particular from urban areas to those lakes. But we still have too many nutrients getting through. And so that's why the regional board moved to developing that total maximum daily load that Hope was talking about. And what that total maximum daily load basically says is you got to do more, and you got to tell us how you're going to do more. And so then those TMDL requirements get incorporated into our permits. And so if you happen to be a city or a county that has storm drains that directly or indirectly discharge into those lakes, you not only have to implement your baseline programs, you have to implement these additional requirements that are specified by the TMDL. And so the district's role with regard to the TMDL is very similar. We help to negotiate that process to describe those programs. Now, the other thing that's a little different about the TMDL is, as Hope mentioned, a lot of people discharge nutrients. Sure, there's nutrients that come off the urban area, but there's nutrients that come off agricultural areas. There's nutrients that are coming out of our wastewater treatment plants. There's nutrients that are coming out of activities that are regulated by other local, state, and federal agencies, and even private enterprise. And so those TMDL requirements are actually incorporated into permits across all of those different entities. And so one of the great things that LESJWA has done for us is that they've created this task force where we can get all of these people together and we can help coordinate and align those programs so we can bring them to bear to the maximum benefit of the lakes. The other thing the task force does is allows us to help to share the cost, to look at innovative new technologies to help protect the lakes. It allows us to look at regional controls like the aeration system and the alum treatment system that Mark was talking about, and to share the cost of those controls across all of these stakeholders so that they have a really high benefit cost ratio in terms of treating runoff to the lakes. And they allow us to monitor the results. We help do all the monitoring for the TMDL is done through the task force. And the results are actually pretty impressive. The results for the watershed programs that the permittees are implementing, the MS4, the cities, and the county, we're reducing nutrient loads in the watershed by upwards of 30%. 30% less nutrients are getting to the lakes now than we did before we started implementing these programs. And so we're making a difference. That's huge. But unfortunately, 30% isn't enough. We still have too many nutrients getting to the lake. And so we looked at, can we do more in the watershed? And the reality is that as you're spending money on watershed compliance programs, the more and more you do, the more expensive it gets. And so that's why we started looking again at these programs that we could implement through the TMDL task force, the alum treatment, the reclaimed water, or not the reclaimed water, but the aeration system, because it turns out that they're much more cost effective. And so the cities, in addition to doing the watershed BMPs, are doing in-lake BMPs like alum treatment to make up the difference, to get to the targets they need to get to. And the alum treatment is in turn doing a great job of knocking those nutrients down in the lake, seeing huge reductions. And so you might ask, well, what's the outcome? Well, the outcome is great. We're seeing the lake have clarity that they haven't seen in decades. We're seeing significantly less algal blooms in the lake, and we're actually hitting the targets, several of the targets for the lake. So this is showing that these programs and these processes we're working through are successful. And for Canyon Lake, we're really at the last mile. I think we're getting really close to knocking Canyon Lake out. We're gonna have to do a little bit more in Canyon Lake. But the other thing we're gonna have to do is to turn back into Lake Elsinore. Lake Elsinore is a much more challenging lake. It's got a much more complicated system in it, and it's much more challenging to hit the targets. Part of the challenges have been the result of the TMDL itself. When we developed the TMDL initially, it was very rudimentary. We were working with the information we had available at the time. We needed to build better models. We couldn't do it then. Well, now we've done it. And what we've learned is that we need to revise the models in the TMDL so that they will allow us to implement the type of innovative technologies that will allow us to attain compliance in the lake in a way that reduces and minimizes costs. And so we have to get that done, and then we're gonna have to start implementing BMPs in the lake. And it's gonna be expensive, we're gonna have to spend some money, but through this task force, I'm confident that we can both get there and get there in a way that is gonna be cost efficient and reasonable. So with that, thank you very much.